The Professors is brought to you by Blackborder.com. The site features everything from articles by pros Gerard Fabiano, Nico Boni, Joel Calafel, Jan Massacard, podcasts, the Ask the Pro and Ask the Judge features, forums, a deck building tool, and more. So go check out Blackborder.com today.
We must embrace a new era of engagement because the time has come. For trust to be sustained, it has to be shared.
Oh, we can smell the hope.
The time has come.
Hello everybody and welcome to yet another episode of The Professors. This week we're here to talk about the Dragonmaster Brian Kibler, how he won the Pro Tour and why, and detail the details of Zendikar sealed as well as a sealed pool of our own. So let's draw.
To live in for future generations everywhere.
After day one, Brian Kibler, a player of the United States, had clearly risen above the rest with a record of 8-0 in matches and 16-0 in games. His extended deck doesn't try to tackle the Dark Depths and Vampire Hexmage combo revealed at the Star City Games Legacy 5K last weekend, which gets a second turn Merit Lage token and hits for a ridiculous 20. It doesn't have the Rafflethopter combo of Thopter Foundry that allows you to sacrifice your Sword of the Meek, which goes to the graveyard, then gets you a 1/1 and 1 life, and returns the Sword of the Meek to play for every mana you spend, and it's not the incredibly sexy and beastly Hypergenesis combo, and it's not Lucas Sio's crazy combination that led him to a 5-0 extended record on day one, but a basic zoo deck with the simple combo of Punishing Fire and Grove of the Burn Willows. The deck was one of the only to consider the combo as potent. However, our second notable card is the Baneslayer Angel. Metaslayer Angel lets you do ridiculous things in the early game like gain life to send you back up above 20, crush opposing Knights of the Reliquary, and even race Progenitus. That's right, in the quarterfinals after Evangelos Papastarokas just kind of forgot to trigger his Angel of Despair. See, after Kibler traded 2 of his Ghost Quarters for 2 of Papastarokas' lands, he proceeded to lead up with Noble Hierarchs. However, Papastarokas got to a 5th turn Hypergenesis, casting Progenitus, followed by a Meddling Mage from Kibler, who had been unable to cast it thanks to not having a blue and white mana necessary, followed by an Angel of Despair from Papastarokas. See, here the Angel of Despair was supposed to destroy something. What was kind of annoying for me was the fact that the ability is not a May ability. It's not if you don't target something, you immediately lose or whatever, but rather the two just kept playing the match. Kibler stayed calm and collective and then flipped out a land in the safe Baneslayer Angel next turn, allowing him to race a net of 7 per turn versus a net of 3 per turn. The question is here, should Kibler have been allowed to win? On one hand, he technically speaking cheated, as he did not remind his opponent to trigger and created a faulty game state. On the other hand, this is a huge example of the Kibler charm that lets him get tons of information from his opponents, including the fact that his semifinal opponent Hunter Burton hadn't sideboarded anything and that Papastarokas was going to drop just 2 creatures off the Hypergenesis. I suppose the actual Angel of Despair trigger issue is comparable to the fact that the major abilities of Zendikar are May abilities. All 20 ally creatures in the landfall effects exhibit cases where the May clause is vital to play. At Grand Prix Boston, there were 3 cases of Soul Warden not gaining someone life in the finals, and the effects become so cumbersome, even a player as meticulous as Conley Woods found the trigger obnoxious enough to not bother with his opponent's Soul Warden trigger, but was given a warning because of it. The counterexample to the May clause's addition in this case is Bloodseeker, a May ability that functionally changes the game state in the same way, a net of 1 more life for you. In fact, the only case where May abilities are not used in Zendikar is on lands. This is likely done to clear up wordiness and for the fact that in Limited it can reward your opponent in the case of the refuges, or their creatures in the case of Turntimber Grove, depending on how you play it. In summation, Kibler did not cheat. It's considered an overall failure by all sides, should be avoided in the future, but then again is a nice trick to employ. And Kibler didn't just win by picking the right deck. He won by being Brian Kibler.
Mix a secret potion and roll the ancient dice, then hire a focus group and have a human sacrifice.
Majority is in agreement that Zendikar Sealed is exponentially more difficult and more skill testing in Sealed and Draft than M10. Playing 16 or 17 lands tend to be unusual, while raising your count to 18, 19, or Hell, 22 is not impossible. You can get enough non-basic lands that playing Teetering Peaks as your 19th land in a blue-white deck isn't absurd, and even an Akum Refuge in a quick-paced red-green deck is playable. Just ask the Dan Samols, who managed to play his way to a 5-0 pre-release victory with 20 lands, 5 of which were non-basic, with 4 out of color in a blue-white deck. As with most sealed decks, though, it's relevant to what's inside. This week, as we step up our ways to look at sealed pools, I'll dissect individual cards via Magic Workstation. White offers us a pretty defensive strategy, but nonetheless a good one. The only 4 cards that are actually borderline playable and sealed are the 2 Shieldmate's Blessings and the 2 Noble Vestiges. Devout Lightcaster is mild black source removal, but as a 4th turn play isn't that exciting, while Cliff Threader helps with erasing red and is notable as a sideboard card. Double Steppe Lynx gets in there for 2, or even 4 with the 2 fetch lands likely to be run, based on other landfall effects. However, on defense they're not so great, which is why I already support white as a base with 2 Pseudo-Oblivion Rings, Journey to Nowhere. Kor Hookmaster and Makindi Shieldmate also mark defensive postures versus black and red, though don't really have another mutual color card to back them up. Bold Defense and Kor Aeronaut are nice tricks that the opposition can't play around, but footnotes next to the shutdown of Journey to Nowhere. Blue, as the least played color of the format, has 9 cards that are relatively notable, and is backed up with control and aggro. But the aggro isn't good, and the control isn't good. While we land a solid Paralyzing Grasp, and the whole reason to play blue Merfolk Seastalkers, Windrider Eel is conditional, and 2 Into the Roils with a Lethargy Trap are rather obstructive to your mana accessibility situation, and these 2 big things are conditional. Blue right now might be a splashable 3rd color, but is in no position to play base. Black gets a little awkward. We've got 10 playables, but we clearly have to drive home the importance of the color in the deck with 2 Crypt Rippers for their activation costs and Hideous End for effective use. The color doesn't have the sort of bomb we're looking for at this point, but it has plenty of consistent plays and card advantage with Stair Expedition and Grim Discovery, also assisting with landfall effects. As the most played color, I expect to be including this set with its 2 Anti-Soul Wardens. However, combining red with white just got a whole lot of awesome with 2 plated GOPs complementing 2 Steppe Lynxes on the assault and 2 Electropotences in the control matches. The sealed format isn't slow, but we can gain enough tempo to start finishing off Electropotence effects, even multiple ones, to tip the game in our favor. That said, we probably shouldn't push for 2. It's a splashable card. Speaking of splashables, can you really play 2 Ruinous Minotaurs in Magma Rift? Well, Magma Rift makes 4 and pseudo 5 removal spells, but it's our late game play. Zvi Mauschwitz marked a good limited format as one which has something to do with mana in the later game. You can't have too many things to do, of course, as that prevents higher drops from being the least bit effective in shaking up the game like they're supposed to do, but you need something to do with extra lands. Magma Rift and Ruinous Minotaur let you sacrifice planes when you're done and use the red for Molten Ravager to power through. Your landfall creatures are still benefited, and as we move towards red and black for our second color, we double our effects. Green offers 4 interesting splash cards. While Zendikar Far Guide is an interesting sideboarded unblockable creature, Vines of Vastwood, Harrow, and Glazing Gladeheart are better splashables for the deck than our single blue card that compares to these cards, Windrider Eel. Harrow's not just the best acceleration of the format, but it's also the best fixing. It allows us to get to the double green casting of the Vines of Vastwood and kicks up our 5 landfallers. Speaking of, Grazing Gladeheart in this mid-range deck easily gets you free Sunspring Expedition and a 2/2. Additionally, Vines of Vastwood isn't just a better giant growth, but if something along the lines happens like a Journey to Nowhere targeting your creature, you can come out of nowhere with your red-green duel, no pun intended, and as the Journey to Nowhere comes into play, cast Vines of Vastwood on the only creature you control, and your opponent then has to target a creature they control. For artifacts, Pumas are nice and all, but he's basically a 2/2 for 3 that makes a bigger defender and lets you gain like 2 extra life in the game. As for Blazing Torches and Expedition maps, though, certainly playable, particularly because of these lands in the case of Expedition maps. As for the lands, we've got 6 here. We don't want to go Dansimoles and play all of them, but we can play both fetch lands, the green one as a forest, and the Arid Mesa for crazy fixing as well. Turntimber Grove and Teetering Peaks, while kind of slow, influence us to play an extra land, too. Question is now, we've got 28 playables, but we're looking to play 18 to 19 lands, so what to eliminate? Well, we've got 14 creatures, which should be cut to 12 or 13 with this scale, and 13 non-creatures to be cut to 8 or 9. While we've got lots of landfall effects, Expedition map starts getting kind of slow and is one of a whopping 5 1-drops, so we'll play the Harrow over it. Ondu Cleric and Makindi Shieldmate get cut here as we start heading towards the aggro setting, and we start considering cutting a Ruinous Minotaur, Electropotence, Kor Aeronaut, and likely the Unstable Footing for our 18th land. This moves the deck towards an incredibly competitive pace that Electropotence couldn't compete with. Ruinous Minotaur is a pit trap for, and Kor Aeronaut doesn't fit in the curve for. Here, should we have a 19th lands? I don't think so. Seems good as is, even with 3 come into play tapped lands and 5 landfall effects, our curve is plenty low, and dropping a 5th turn land is like shooting the revolver 6 times versus the opponent. Capping the deck with basics is the hardest part now. We've got consistent white to cast and slightly bigger red to cast, plus Molten Ravager with green on the side. Here we add 6 mountains, 4 plains, and 3 forests. You do the math. So until next time, this is Anthony Palmerio. Tapped out for now, but we'll untap soon.
Dum, 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 dum.